I saw this interesting post just now about the interesting narrative that tends to go into nature documentaries or educational videos or what have you. A lot of them tend to take a narrative role in it instead of a, I don't know, just literal role. Like they act like every single aspect of nature is a character that has plots and thoughts and ideas and are working to a goal of some kind, when in reality nature is far more chaotic and far less structured. The biggest one that they tend to do this incorrectly, like I can understand if you want to put the characterization on to make it more relatable if you're doing it for like an animal or something, or even to some extent plants, but when you're starting to do it on a phenomenon is when it gets tricky. The one they do this the most with is evolution, like the most with in terms of being incorrect, because evolution is not a purposeful idea. It doesn't have a plot. It doesn't have any sort of idea, plans or anything like that. There's no intelligent design. Well, I mean, there is, but there isn't. It's complicated. Anyways, which kind of brought me to the idea, reminded me of how many people just misunderstand what evolution is. And I've talked about it in the past, how people oftentimes, if they're creationists, they completely dismiss evolution completely, saying, that evolution doesn't exist. I mean, it's just a theory and all this other stuff, and the difference between a scientific theory and a casual theory. Scientific theory needs a huge amount of evidence to back it up. It's just, and the reason why it's not called a theory, I mean, the reason why it's called a theory and not a fact is because you can't test it over and over again, which of course evolution happens over such a long period of time, it's next to impossible to accurately test. However, we are doing our best with things like mice, where the generations happen so quickly and that sort of thing. Another thing that's a scientific theory is gravity, because gravity is so huge that we can't adequately test it, because you can't run scientific tests on planetary bodies because we're so tiny in comparison. Anyways, so another thing is that evolution isn't purposeful. It's not like, how the hell did that trait get, all evolution is random mutations that allow one member of that species to survive or long enough to reproduce, or to make them more reproductively viable, either through attraction or ability or length of reproductive age or whatever the hell else. That's all it is. And I know when people hear mutations, they're like, what? I'm not a mutant. What are you talking about? But actually almost every single trait about you is a mutation. And it's sometimes mutations are just, like, mutations are completely random. It's just at some point in the DNA something gets a little bit weird, and then it gives you a certain trait or ability that someone else didn't. So for example, sometimes it helps you, like it helps, it makes you stronger, or it makes you faster, or something else, so you can survive better. Or sometimes it makes you smarter, or whatever else. But sometimes it's just useless stuff, like just a random thing that changed the way you look or the way you act or something, and it doesn't help you or harm you. Like, for example, red hair, that's a mutation, and it doesn't do anything to help or harm you. I mean, it's kind of a weird gene, actually, but it just exists, and it doesn't stop anyone from reproducing. So, well, I mean, yeah, but it doesn't affect your reproductive abilities, and plenty of people can still find you attractive, and it doesn't affect your lifespan or anything like that. But sometimes the mutation does help you, like, for example, being able to drink milk or like digest lactose. That's a mutation, and not every single person has it, because the thing is that if you're able to survive without the mutation, you can still pass on your lack of that mutation's genes on. So, people who are lactose intolerant just don't have that mutated gene to allow them to digest lactose, or lactic acid, sorry, or whatever the hell. And then after a while, enough mutations happen that on separate groups of a species that they become entirely new species. So, as I've explained this before, where a lot of people see evolution as that, narrative with the monkey turning into a more man-like monkey until we have man, but that's not how evolution works. It's more of a downward flow chart with common ancestors to animals that are alive today. So that's why it's like, well, if we evolved from monkeys, why are monkeys still around? We evolved from a common ancestor, because that's, again, how it works. Is just like if you look at cats, I mean, there are so many different types of cats, and they're very different in their own way, but they do have commonalities. So you don't say, well, if lions and, you know, tigers or whatever, like, why are they still around? It's because they didn't evolve from each other, just like we didn't evolve from monkeys. We evolved from a common ancestor. And if you go far back enough, you have common ancestors with every single living being on this planet. So even trees and stuff like that, you have to go far back enough. So, and that sort of thing. So, and just because, and a lot of people think that evolution grants you these abilities, and evolution always gives you something to make you better and everything else, but sometimes it gives you a detrimental mutation, but as long as it doesn't stop you from being able to reproduce or live long enough to do so, then it can still get passed on and everything else. So things like allergies, or you know, when you're born with a disability, or you know, learning disorders or something like that. I'm just trying to think of ones in humans. There are ones in animals, but sometimes it just makes you have to do things in a different way, and then eventually you learn how to do things in a different way, and then it allows you the adaptation that way. Because again, evolution is adaptation. Mutations that in change environment, a mutation occurs to help certain members of the species survive better in the difference of environment. So say you have original species that are constantly, you know, getting attacked by predators, and then one of them develops the ability to climb a tree and the other one develops the ability to dig a hole. Neither is better than the other, but both of those abilities, though completely and utterly different, help them to survive. So one is hiding in the ground and the other one's hiding in the tree from their main land predator, and they're safe. Again, neither is better. Just like having brown hair isn't any better than having blonde hair, or having dark skin isn't any better than having light skin. Because, again, that's even in humanity's mutations. We started out as black people, anyone who denies that, but we all started off in Africa as black people. And then as we got farther away from the equator, after a while it was like, oh crap, we're not getting the vitamin D we need from the sun, we need to get paler. That's all it is. The closer you are to the equator, the more sun you're getting, the more sun protection you need, the more melanin you have in your skin, eyes, and hair. That's what dark hair color, same thing that makes your hair and eyes darker or lighter, it's the same thing that does it with the skin, is melanin. So if you're from, you know, up north where there's barely any sunshine, you're going to be pasty-faced and light hair, light eyes. But if you're from the equator where there's like constant harsh sunshine, then you're going to be dark skin, dark eyes, with black hair, or whatever the hell. So, in different hair types even, you know, serve different purposes, or not even sometimes. Like sometimes it's just some are better suited for this, some are better suited for that, and all that other stuff. And my personal theory on the black people hair, and then this is just something I thought up, it might be completely wrong, and I'm sorry if this sounds offensive anyway, it's just to act like a sun hat, because you know it just grows out more than it grows down, versus trying to keep your head warm to grow down. That's my theory. I haven't actually looked it up, but that's just when you're like, maybe that's why that thing works and happened and stuff like that. But yeah, then you got places like, you know, in Ireland, or in, you know, Britannia and everything else, where there's a lot of rain, and curly hair is very common there. So, you know, in my opinion, you know, thought to keep them warm and dry and stuff like that. And hello, Burr. Sorry, I have a kitty cat on my lap all of a sudden. Anyways, so again, evolution is not some purposeful thing. It's not some imaginary thing. It is something that exists. It's adaptation. It's, you know, it takes a very long time for things to get really huge differences. Usually it's just minor, tiny little mutations that build on each other until it's kind of like how you don't realize how much time has passed or how much you've changed as a person until you look back a couple years. And you're like, holy shit, so much has changed. But it didn't feel like it when you're going through it. You don't realize when you're a kid, you don't realize how much you're growing until you look how much you've grown. So that's basically evolution, and it's completely random, completely coincidental, and everything else, and our differences don't make us better or worse, they just make us different. Better suited for certain things and better suited for other things, because if everyone was the same and good at the same things, then you would have a shortage in areas that, you know, well, first of all, that one ability would be unexceptional and boring, and you wouldn't be considered any better for it, and there would be a shortage in other areas because there's an overabundance in that area. So even just in our own ability, some people are artistic, some people are scientific, other people are mathematic, other people are literary and tactile, all these different things. It's because if we have the group of us, because they have looked at it, and it is not survival of the fittest in that man, or person, individuals. It's not survival of the individual. They found historically and anthropologically, it's that working together is the key to survival. Not being able to be the best of the best is to be able to work as a team, because there are strength in numbers, and diversity creates strength, because you have abilities that together you have all the abilities instead of having one and lacking in everything else. I think I said enough. Thanks for watching.